My name is Tyler Curl. Through my mother Susan and her mother Elizabeth, I'm of Secwepemc descent. Through my father Elliot and his father Clifford, I'm of Irish descent. I'm a grandchild of an Indian residential school survivor. I'm a probation officer working in the corrections system. I'm also a practicing Catholic, having been welcomed into the church at the Easter Vigil 2017. I've been asked to share some thoughts about the overrepresentation of Indigenous people in the criminal justice system, particularly as it pertains to the Indian residential school system. Now let me be clear, I cannot speak for anyone else or their experiences. I can only share what I've heard and what has been taught to me, and I'm grateful to be here sharing a little bit with you. I invite you to take a couple minutes here and imagine. Imagine you were taken from your home, from your family and community, from everything you know. Maybe you're about 5 years old, the age of a child entering kindergarten. You suddenly find yourself in an institution, your new home, with no family, none of your friends. You are told that you cannot speak your language. You must forget your spiritual and cultural practices, the only way of life you've ever known. You are told that the wisdom of your parents and grandparents, their ways of life, their beliefs, everything that you have been taught by them is wrong, and you must now adopt new ways of life and new beliefs. During your time at this institution, you are instructed, but not hugged, held, comforted, or loved. Maybe someone there abuses you, physically, emotionally, sexually. You're not shown what a healthy romantic relationship looks like. You're not shown what a healthy family relationship looks like. Maybe you are taught skills and given some knowledge, but you are not learning how to love and live lovingly with others. Now imagine that you return to your home, to your family, your community. You are back home, but you are changed. You carry invisible scars, secret wounds. How would you adapt to life there? Would you know how to live in community in a healthy way? How would you navigate romantic relationships if you've never been shown? At some point, you find yourself with children of your own. Would you have any idea what parenting looks like? Probably not, since you weren't raised by parents. No, you were disciplined, maybe violently. What if that's the understanding you were given about dealing with children? Imagine carrying your invisible scars and your secret wounds. Where would you turn for healing from the trauma you experienced? How would you cope with what you've been through? You probably wouldn't talk about it. No one in your community really talks about it. Maybe you find that alcohol numbs the pain. Yeah, maybe that's the way to deal with it. Maybe you have lots of pain inside and it comes out as anger. Maybe you've learned patterns of violence and abuse and you find yourself heading down that path. Now imagine this across generations. It's not just you and your brothers, sisters, cousins. No, your parents experienced this, your grandparents, their parents, and so on. What do you think your community might look like? What social challenges do you think you might expect to see? Maybe high rates of violence and abuse? Maybe high rates of alcoholism and drug use? What about suicide rates? What about poverty, unemployment? What about conflict with the criminal justice system? Could you reasonably expect any of these outcomes? Well, I don't have to imagine, I know. This isn't my story, but this is the story, or something similar to it, of many of my Indigenous clients. The person sitting across from me might not have been in an Indian residential school. Maybe it was his mother, his father, his aunts, uncles, probably a grandparent or two. We're not talking about ancient history here. We're talking about the last 150 years, with the last Indian residential school closing in 1996. The effects of the Indian residential school system are real, and they are still with us. Indigenous people comprise about 6% of the population of BC. Sadly, they also comprise about 35% of our provincial jail population. The numbers in the federal correction system are pretty similar. Now, I don't want to give you the wrong impression. This isn't the whole story. The histories of the Indigenous peoples of this land are much richer and more nuanced than the sum total of the families, communities, and individual lives disrupted by the Indian residential school system. But I don't think you can fully appreciate and understand the experience of Indigenous people in the criminal justice system if you don't understand what I'm talking about here. So I encourage you to learn more about this tragic piece of our shared history and how it continues to affect our society. And think about it. Think about what it was like. Think about the effects.